I am Zach Montroy, the founder and CEO of the Intention Collective, and you're listening to EA Interviews.
EA Interviews, episode 480.
Inspiration, transformation, success stories, and the imperfect action round. 7 days a week. Join Mario Ficini for today's Expert Authority Effect interview.
Expert Authority World, we're in for a treat today, and I'm going to be sharing with you, with Zach Montroy, about teams in the workspace, in businesses, and the toxicity of it, and how you can have a healthy one. It's so interesting to me that everyone wants to have a business, and then they're like, I want to go into business for myself and build this massive empire. And then you say, well, have you thought about scaling, building out a team and everything? And they're like, wow. And for the people who do, because I remember thinking this years ago, and then I started building out my team, it's like, yay, I've got a team. It's like, you're in the cool kids club and all these things are going on. And then it's like, what the heck's going on over here? What's this person thinking? This isn't rockets. And there's all these new challenges, which if you're a real entrepreneur, you might like that and invite that. But the question is, how do you still make this work effectively? I'm excited to unpack this with Zach Montroy right after we thank our sponsor. Every business needs a book, including yours. And that's why I'm launching my new book to help you regardless of where you think your current writing abilities are. Visit eapublishingmethodbook.com today to learn the 7 steps to publish and promote your nonfiction lead and profit-generating business book in 8 weeks. Once again, that's eapublishingmethodbook.com. Here he is, ladies and gentlemen, CEO of the Intention Collective, Zach Montroy. How are you feeling today, Zach?
I'm great, Mario. Great to be with you today. Thanks for having me.
The pleasure is absolutely mine. I was joking around a little bit, and I have a team, and I want to learn from you just as much as I'm sure the listeners do. But I really do feel like that. There's like the entrepreneurs who go, well, I want to scale and do all these things, but they won't put a team in place. But the second you do, it's like you just shifted your problems that maybe you couldn't figure out to now you have to communicate what you couldn't figure out to people who have no idea what you're talking about. How do you fix all this?
Yeah. How do I just have this simple remedy? No, I'm just kidding. It's really complicated, right? Like, we are all human beings. We bring all of who we are to work every day. And I think you just hit the nail on the head. I think oftentimes as entrepreneurs, we realize and know we can't get to where we want to go without a team. We hire a bunch of people, and then we just think that they're magically going to get it. They're going to magically understand the vision, understand what they're supposed to be doing, how they're supposed to be working. And we make all these assumptions. And then when things don't go our way, what do we typically do? We tend to blame the people. And I think oftentimes it comes down to a leadership problem.
What if you have SOPs and videos and training and stuff in place, and people aren't being held, and they're not holding themselves accountable to it? When you say, okay, here's the deadline a week ago, it's 2 weeks later, and they never brought it up once or said sorry or this or that, or.
Yeah, well, I mean, I love that you really just started there with how do we make sure that we have clarity for team members. And I think, SOPs, really helping people understand what are their roles and responsibilities at a high level. What does the mission behind their job look like, with deep clarity, no matter the obstacle that they're going to encounter, what's the number they're responsible for. So if you've really created that clarity and you can sort of sleep at night, really resting in the fact that you've been as abundantly clear as you can, I think accountability looks different, right? Accountability looks different depending on your team, depending on, the situation. But I think most leaders really have difficulty having those hard conversations
100%.
to hold people accountable. Yeah.
100%. And this is surreal because I don't know how smart it would be for me to say something on the air live. I don't mind saying it, but the people hearing about it may not know what's coming down the road, let's say.
Okay.
And
oh boy, you're hearing it here first.
Okay, so the SOPs are in order. You have all these different things. Okay, there's like 17 things I want to ask. Let's just spit them out. KPIs, remote workers, in-person workers. You have to have the KPIs to know what you're doing. Also,
Hmm.
budget. Let's throw an accounting in there. Like you're, uh, how do you know you're on budget and everything? Or the worst thing is finding out after the fact. But how do you handle remote people versus people that are in office? Do you think there's a difference, or do you really think it just comes down to the right people,
I think it comes down to the right people and it comes
the
down to
leadership and the leadership?
intentionality. What's that?
And the leadership. I want to say for the
Oh, for
record, I
sure.
do agree with you. Um, it does come down to the leader.
Hmm.
However, you can be a good leader and have the wrong people, right?
Absolutely. And
Okay, cool.
I think many leaders don't, kind of going back to what you just said, they don't have the hard conversation or conversations, and they don't really have clarity on how they should hold people accountable. So if you've done the work of clarifying the KPIs, if you've done the work of clarifying the roles and responsibilities, now you've got to have the courage to have the hard conversation,
Oh,
or hard conversations, and that's where accountability lies.
with the team or the leader?
With the leader. It's interesting that you ask that, though. Patrick Lencioni, who's done a ton of work in organizational development, they did a huge study on accountability and found that if a leader is willing to and skilled in having hard conversations,
Mm-hmm.
holding people accountable, actually and teaches their team, the less that they'll have to do it. Doesn't really make sense, but if the leader is unwilling to have those conversations, the team is unwilling to hold one another accountable. And we know the best accountability comes from all around, right? If I'm your peer holding you accountable, that's actually there's a lot more pressure to that than your boss holding you accountable. So you, in a healthy team environment, you see peer-to-peer accountability really being a pervasive behavior within the team and within the culture.
So I'm trying to get the answer where this isn't my fault.
uh
I don't
it
disagree with what you're saying. Patrick Lencioni is a great author, great speaker. He's one of my favorites. Would love to have him on the show. Pat, if you're listening,
if you're
seen him at the
listening, you need
Global
to be on the
Leadership
show.
Summit
Yeah.
for years, and I just I I don't want to say I can't be mean because I can absolutely be mean. I just it's not my natural default, and it's I've spent two
Mm.
decades learning to be more optimistic, less pessimistic, all these things that are more attractive for a business and just overall who wants to be around someone cynical and pessimistic? But I have noticed that this, and I'm talking about myself
Mm.
here, that's what I was talking about is like the surrealness of this conversation with you today.
Mm.
Like, thanks God, I didn't have enough challenges going on in life and business, and now it's like, cool, we get to talk about this, and all I'm hearing is like, this is on me, which it is.
So
It's my business,
tell
but
so I'm going to reverse interview you here because this will be fun for me. Tell me, I'd love to hear, you just talked about cynicism, you talked about, uh really just sort of that the dark cloud, and I'm guessing you're associating that with accountability. So talk to me about the association with being cynical,
the hard
with being
conversations, they're
mean.
just not
Okay.
fun. And maybe not
Oh.
cynicism and all of that, but there's people who are really good at finding what's wrong with everything.
Mm.
No one really likes being around them. I get
Right.
where they have their place. Like, I will say, like comedy and movie scripts, when you need tension and friction, it's like, okay, it does make the storyline better, but it doesn't make it any more fun to be like, okay, you're cool, but I have to let you go.
Yeah.
You're a nice
Yeah.
person, but you have not hit this consistently, and I don't know what to do. I've done everything I've asked you 15 times.
Yeah, and I think you're right there. And what I do want to say, though, is accountability, having hard conversations. I don't think for many people it's fun. It certainly is not fast, it's not easy, and I don't think that that's what we're called to do as leaders. I think as
Okay.
leaders we're called to serve the people, serve the work. That means having those hard conversations, and in some cases it means letting people go. It means, we've clarified what your role and responsibility is here. We've had the conversation, maybe we've had the conversation over and over again, and this just doesn't feel like the right place for you. The right, Jim Collins, get right seats, right people and right seats on the right bus. This doesn't feel like the right bus for you.
Okay.
Maybe we've moved them into different seats to see if their unique ability fits in a different place, but that's okay. And there might be a better place for them to serve and to work. None of us are the end all be all employers or place for people to work, and maybe there's a better opportunity out there for them.
Again, the surrealness. Patrick Lencioni, the Global Leadership Summit, gone
Mm,
numerous times. I think he was talking along with Dr. Henry Cloud. Very similar stuff, and I was like, and I didn't, and that was, geez, 10, 12 years ago, and I don't think I liked it anymore then.
mm.
It's just,
It is. It's I think the hard thing about it, and it should always be hard, I think, for us as leaders, especially when we're focused on people. And I love Dr. Cloud talks about necessary endings. And, there are there's seasonality to jobs, there's
mm,
seasonality to our lives. And just because this chapter is closing, you can be a good person, I can be a good person. This just isn't the right fit. And maybe it's because of, you know, your skill set, whatever it is. If I can with integrity say, I've had the hard conversation, I have given you as much clarity as humanly possible, and this is not working, then it's not working. And better to help someone find something else and give them dignity in that than to feel like you're pushing a rope all the time.
oh, good gravy. So there's a part in my book, and it was a very similar feeling. I think it's chapter 2. I mentioned it, and when I was writing it, I like started tearing up because there was someone else a few years ago, um, similar thing, and it was just like there's a line in there about you want the best for them no matter what you do. You just keep them giving them more rope and more rope and more rope because it's like you
Mm,
don't want to offend them, this, that, the other thing, but all they keep doing is hanging themselves with it.
yeah,
Like, how much more can you do before it's like you're dragging me down too? I'm waking up every day thinking, is this getting done? Is this like You're supposed to be taking this off my plate.
yeah. And
Make
I,
my
I
life
mean,
easier. I don't care
right.
what anyone's doing. Like, are you bringing something of value that's like, hey, this is now less for me to think about. Thanks.
Right. And if you've done all that you can do to create that clarity, give them autonomy in their role, and it's not working, the results aren't there, I mean, deep down, I'm sure that they know that too. And I would say it's pretty miserable to be in a job where you're not succeeding, not meeting, what's required of you, what's asked of you. And sometimes there's ethical issues in that too, right? Like you're not putting in the time, you're not putting in the energy, you're not putting in the effort that we would say is like the minimal effort.
Oh, I can.
And again, there, if I've had the conversation, we can hold one another accountable. They're never fun though.
Okay, so they're not supposed to be fun. Cool, cool.
Mm.
Um,
I love Brene Brown said, when I was actually getting trained by her, and she said, I was working with special forces, and they were talking about vulnerability and leadership and hard
mhm.
conversations. And he said, you just got to embrace the suck. And
Yes.
she was like, tell me more. What? And he said, embrace the suck. It's not supposed to be fun. It's not fast. It's not easy, but we have to have the courage to have those conversations.
Okay, so my next question is where do you get this extra courage from when needed on demand?
Well, it's not fast. And I would say it's not fun, but I think courage comes from being willing to be vulnerable. And I think being vulnerable, being courageous means I know who I am. I understand my skill sets. I understand my giftedness. I understand what I'm not good at. I think many of us as leaders think that we're great at everything, and we all have blind spots. But if I've invited the right people into my life, I understand my unique ability, my skill sets. I'm understanding the baggage that I bring to leadership. We bring all of who we are to work every day. I think that's where we muster up the courage to be vulnerable. That's where we muster up this idea of having courage to lean in when we don't know the answer, when we don't know what the outcome is going to be. I mean, that's the very definition of courage. That's the very definition of vulnerability, is being willing to step into that messy situation when we don't know what's going to happen.
Fantastic. You know your stuff. I appreciate it.
There's a little bit of nerdery there, but that's all right. I'll take the compliment, Mario.
um, this is fantastic. Okay, so let's flip this back because we're getting. I love everything you're saying. I'm just like, wow. There's the surrealness of this is probably the most ever. There's always some like, okay, I can relate to this. I can relate to this, but literally today, this conversation, I'm so glad you're here because I'm not the only one going through it. Apparently, I'm the guinea pig that we're using as the example. But a lot of my friends and other successful entrepreneurs, it's like it's a behind the scenes conversation usually. Would you agree?
Yeah. Hey, yeah. I mean, and that's the really difficult part in leadership, is making sure that we have people to process this stuff with. You know, leadership can be a really lonely place. I don't think it has to be. I think every good leader has a great coach, has a great and or a great therapist by their side, because I think if we're going to think about holistically this idea of serving the work, serving the people that are entrusted to our care, there's a lot of really nuanced but really important decisions that we have to make in there. And I think having the right people to process those with is radically important if we want to show up with integrity and courage and vulnerability in what we do.
Talk to me more about this showing up with courage, integrity, and vulnerability. How would you define showing up with all of that? So, in what I'm kind of hearing is by me not doing by a leader not doing the thing that they're supposed to, they're not in integrity with themselves. Is there a
Yeah.
component to that? Like when you know and you're just like running from it, and it doesn't matter if it's, I really don't think it matters if it's business, personal. If there's something you know you need to be doing and
Yeah.
you're not, you're just lying to yourself.
Absolutely. And to go back to a definition of integrity that I love, and integrity is choosing courage over comfort. It's not choosing what's fun, fast, or easy. It's choosing to do what's right. It's choosing to lean into our core values and to show up really as the best version of who we are. And I think, from what you just said, how do we show up with courage, vulnerability? How do we show up with integrity? I think it's really choosing to show up with the mentality of I'm here in this comes from Brene Brown. I'm going to show up with the mentality of let's get this right, not I have to be right.
Okay.
I'm going to show up as, my wholehearted self to the situation and realize I don't have, I never have all the information. I never have all the details. I don't know the backstory 100% of the time, but I'm going to be willing to be curious. I'm going to be willing to dig in here. I'm going to show up and listen to you at the same intensity that I want to be heard. And I'm going to be here to try to get this right. It's not about me winning. It's not about you winning. It's really about how do we show up, serve one another in this, even if it's a really hard situation, a hard decision that has to be made, and understand that I don't have to self-protect. I don't have to come in guarded or with the walls up, the barriers up. I can come and put my whole self, my whole heart in front of us for this conversation or the situation that we're in.
Wow. Thank you.
Yeah.
This is very powerful, and I know it's helping a lot of people. Like I said, usually it's a behind the scenes conversation. It's like, I don't know what to do, but because, again, the entrepreneurs, it's always 5 to 10 steps ahead down the road.
Sure.
And this is what I'm aiming for, usually for the greater good. and some stupid email thing, which we can't stand to begin with, some minute detail. Well, it's minute until there's 17 of them, and it's just every day.
Yeah.
So let's flip
Yeah.
this back.
Okay.
We talked about, and this isn't me deflecting. Like, I think we went deep enough here.
Got it. Got it. I can appreciate that.
I do want to go back to, for the listener, because, that's it. It's about them, not my issues. But I do appreciate you diving deeper, because I literally like this. Anyway, let's give them, okay, so instead of getting to this point and having to deal with it, what do you suggest to go, okay, if you're looking to build the right team, hire the right people, get the right people in place, whatever the case is, how do you ensure, because just like with clients, how do you solve this problem 17 steps down the road? It's called You Don't. It's called managing client expectations, and you better have done it proper from the front. So let's flip this back with team. How do you get the right team members in place from the get-go? And when can you evaluate? Like, do you give them 30 days, 60, 90? Like, how do you not let it get to the point where it's 6+ months later, a year later, and it's like, man, now I got to go through this again?
Right. Yeah. And there's the like, oh, it's just not working out. We just need to be done. And the person's like, no one's ever talked to me about things not working out. I think if we start with, the end in mind here, what does the ideal candidate look like? I do a lot of work with clients on who's an ideal candidate here. What is their education, their experience? What does their wiring look like? What is their unique ability? What is their working genius? There's a lot of ways to sort of assess that on the front end. What are the leadership skills, the human skills, the technical skills that are sort of the must-haves in the role? And the reason that we start there before we ever interview anyone is because, we all have bias that we bring into conversations. And it irks me to no end when I hear someone like, I really love that person. What did you love about them? Oh, like we grew up in the same area and, we went to the same college. And in my mind, well, not in my mind, I say this. So they look like you, they sound like you, they like the same things as you. You're trying to hire another version of you. Oh no, they have the skills. They don't. You are now like projecting on them that they have the skills that you need. So before we ever talk to anyone, I think we have to figure out what are the boundaries of this role? What does the role need? What do we need from the position? What do we need from the person? And then, we go through the process, and I think there's a book called The Who, which has a lot of amazing principles on hiring in it. Once we've interviewed them, once we have them on the team, then it really is, we are going to provide a feedback-rich environment. Feedback every once in a while, it feels critical or feels fake. So, making sure that we're intentional. And I would say every week or two, you need to be having a very intentional conversation with the person on what's working, what's not working, what's missing, what needs to be added. Where are you confused? Where can we provide better clarity? Just a really intentional conversation with, some pretty simple questions there to really give them feedback on how you are seeing them perform in the role, and then give them a chance to give you feedback as well. What do they need from you? What clarity do they need in the role? And really within the first few weeks, you should really have a good idea. If I'm having to tell this person the same thing over and over again, am I not being clear? Or is there a performance issue that we need to talk about? I think you should really have a good idea by the end of the first 90 days, especially if you've had these conversations every week or two, and then you've set the employee up, the team member up for success, because they understand what's expected of them. And they understand the value of feedback and communication in the culture as well.
Meetings. Hold on. I'm sorry. That was awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
I have so many more questions about that, but I do want to ask about meetings.
Okay. What's your question about meetings?
You're saying 30, 60, so 30 and 60 days into it. You mentioned having a feedback loop at 90. What about 30 and 60? Do you have anything special, like here's what you should be doing here, here, and here? And then how often should you be having meetings?
The one-on-one meetings are even the team that they're working with that meeting, I would say that's actually an every about 2 week meeting.
Okay.
And we tend to ask just a couple of questions there. What should you start, stop, and continue doing? Or if you want to frame it differently, what's working, what's not working, what needs to be clarified or added? You can kind of ask the mix of those questions. Well, I would recommend that that meeting happens every other week, and sometimes every week. You want to be having the regular one-on-ones, but that feedback meeting really is for people that are working alongside of them, their manager, maybe
You're
even
talking
people
in
that
person.
report to them. No, it can be over Zoom. That's a totally fine meeting to have over Zoom. If it's in person, it's in person. I've found, I mean, this is a 15-minute meeting, not a long meeting whatsoever.
Okay.
But then when we get to the 30-day, again, we're getting in the cadence of having these meetings. I might give a little bit more feedback there. I might, make sure that we're kind of digging into deeper issues. And remember too, I'm asking them for the same feedback to team members or to whomever
What if they
is,
don't give any? Oh no, I got everything I need. And then 2 weeks later, it's the same stuff. And oh, I got everything I need. How about this one? You ready,
mm,
Zach?
I'm
Is
ready.
is there anything going on behind the scenes that I don't know about that you'd like to share that would explain this?
It's a great question. Yeah.
Oh no, everything's
Um,
fine.
yeah. Yeah. I mean,
Have you ever gone to
you were,
Hollywood because you're the best actor on the face of the earth?
yeah, yeah. I mean, I think give them time, right? Like if you asked me that question 15 days in, I'd be like, are you testing me to
After
see if
6 months.
like, yeah, who my alliances are? Yeah, I think it's a great question to ask. And I think the other part of that should be making sure that we have a culture where everyone is sharing that feedback to the person, not about the person. So we want to make sure we don't have back channeling happening for sure.
Hmm.
But as the senior leader, you don't know everything going on in the organization. So yeah, hey, I noticed in this meeting this happened, or this kind of stuff is happening behind the scenes, or this process could get improved, but I'm not sure maybe what's going on with it. So that insight and providing them a safe place, which you can really take a route here to divert into psychological safety. That's really important when asking team members for feedback. But I mean, if they're not giving feedback, it could be pointing to a much bigger issue, right? Are you not curious? Are you not learning? Do you not feel safe or comfortable? Do you not actually have any feedback? I think that's a big conversation to dig into with that person.
Do me a favor and expand on that a little bit. So if they don't want to give feedback, they don't feel safe. How do you handle it?
Well, Timothy Clark and Amy Edmondson have written a lot about psychological safety. You Psychological safety takes work and time, and just like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, self-actualization comes at the top. There's really building blocks to making sure you're creating a psychologically safe environment so people understand what's expected of them. There's collaborator safety. It's a learning culture. We are growth minded. They are seeing the willingness of the leader to receive feedback. There's a lot written on how well we receive feedback mirrors the way that people feel comfortable giving feedback in an organization. So, I mean, that's again, the work of the leader is to create that safe environment for people to function within. But I mean, I think that that's foundational if you want people to share rich feedback that's going to actually make a difference and help grow the organization.
Wow, this is like a master class in like what to do and what not to do because there's so many nuance. I mean, the nuances of you're dealing with people,
Hmm.
and ultimately you want to care for them and everything. But can that be a weakness? You care too much. You don't want to hurt them because we started this with not having the courage to do this
Hmm.
stuff. But at the same time, when you said it's probably pretty miserable not hitting the things, and then it's like, well, definitely miserable when you just see it happen continually. Um,
Yeah.
that's why I wanted to go back to. So you can ask me whatever you want, or uh, I really wasn't trying to deflect there because it's not about me, but I really did want to go. Okay, if you're listening to this
Mm.
and you're not dealing with this exact scenario, what are like three things that like how do you prevent it from happening? Because if I was listening to this, I'd be like, okay, sorry Mario, that sucks, but what could you have done to prevent it so you don't need to go through it?
Mm.
And especially if
Yeah.
it's after 20 years in business, it's not the first time it's happened, but I'm always thinking like, what could I have done better? And that's why I straight up asked you about the SOPs because I'm like, okay, the training could have been better. This time, I'm like, no,
Sure.
it's 20 different videos on every single step. You don't even need to really think about it. It's literally here's what to do.
Yeah.
If you can't figure it out at that point, like, am I supposed to be signing your name on the homework?
Mm.
Like, to what degree is it enabling versus and you said something else that caught my attention when you said the bare minimum. Like, oh, absolutely. And
Yeah.
and that just expands on okay, it took you 10 days to do what should take 15 minutes.
Yeah. So can you help me
Sorry,
under,
I've
I
been
mean,
busy.
yeah, and that's, I think, that's a great conversation, right? Hey, help me understand why this took you 12 days, because in my mind, this should take 15 minutes. Help me understand why this took you so long or why you didn't prioritize this. Like, I'm going into that conversation with curiosity and not judgment.
Okay.
But, going back to something that you just said, can we be too kind? I have never, uh, when we're really honest, and I'll say this for myself, I have never not had a hard conversation because I was trying to be too kind. I have avoided the hard conversation because I was afraid of how it would make me look, the uncomfortableness of the conversation. Um, it was about me. It was not about the other person. And
Really?
I think 99% of the time in leadership, if we are avoiding, the hard things because we're trying to be too kind, I think if we really dig into that, there is a strong likelihood that we are avoiding because of us, how we're going to feel, how we're going to look, that it's going to be hard and awkward and not fun. And it's not really about the other person's feelings.
What if it's you feel so this isn't working, but it's at least okay, it's moving along very slowly, but it's at least moving along. If I do this, then it's going to halt to absolute zero.
If you do this, meaning if you have the hard conversation.
The progress with the work. Okay,
Yeah. I
so it should
mean,
be doing, let's say, 10 units a week. It's doing one or two, but at least we're doing one. I guess the logic would be at least we're doing one or two versus zero until we get
the
someone else in place.
warm body, fallacy. Better to have someone there than no one at all. I would say that's a hard conversation you have to lean into. Hey, we've talked about 10 units a week is the standard. That's sort of permission to play here. You have been producing 2 units a week after week. Help me understand what's
Consistently,
going
mind
on.
you.
Yeah.
Consistently, mind you.
Have we had the conversation though with the person about why only two? What's kind of happening that's only letting us get to two? 3 times? Okay. Then it's really clear here that this is not the right fit. We've had this conversation about figuring it out. We've given you the tools, we've given you the coaching and feedback, and this is just not the right fit for you. And we're happy to help you on your journey. We're happy to help you leave well, but this clearly is just not the right thing for you. And that's okay. That's okay.
Fantastic. Seriously, thank you. Because
Yeah.
again, I know there's so many people that deal with this, and you know what? I've tried helping people just from a human understanding and listening standpoint because, when I hear about it, it's the nights and weekends when you're supposed to be relaxing with people, other business owners,
Right.
and they can't relax. It's far and few
Right.
between when something gets me to the point where I'm at that point. And I'm thankful for that. Like, I like
Hmm.
comedy. I like having fun like we were before we started and everything. And I can kind of forget about it. But when I see my friends and family and people I care about, and it's like, you're literally at a party and they're sitting in a corner just like nibbling on something. It's like, what's going on? Well,
Hmm.
and again, well, have you read this book? Have you considered this? And obviously, I'm not the expert in this field. But again, working with thousands of people, I've picked up a few things just how to understand people and
Sure.
just help on a human level. And it's just sad because it's like there's so many people dealing with this.
Yeah.
And it's one of the reasons I wanted to have you on because there's not enough people talking about it, let alone helping with it. So, is there anything I'm not asking? Like, oh, here, I hope these questions were good, but is there anything I haven't asked that is something everyone should know that you do want to cover that I just don't know about?
I think maybe the thing that I would reiterate is oftentimes we avoid accountability. Sorry, we avoid accountability. We avoid conflict, and deep down, it's because we know that we've not really provided the clarity. We've not really
Mm.
provided the coaching along the way that person deserves to have had. And so we avoid because we feel bad. We avoid because we
It's
might get called
painful.
out. Yeah, and we might get called out, right? Like I've not actually had this conversation with you. So I would just say clear is kind. And I have never heard any team, any employer ever say, oh, we communicated too much. Oh, over clarified what was expected in the role. Never heard that one time.
Okay, let's flip this again then.
Mm. Okay.
The meetings, the frequency, the cadence, and all that, you have the SOPs, you have the training, you're communicating. But where's the point where, okay, you have someone on the team obviously to help. If they require 10 hours of input for you, 10 hours of work, that feels like a bit much. Do you have some like golden ratio of like, okay, if for every 5, 10, 20, 40 hours they do, it should only take this amount of time for input communication? Because I agree, the more clarity and all that, but if you do 10 hours work and it takes me even 5 of like, okay, here, like that defeats the whole purpose of why you hire people, in my opinion.
Sure. Yeah, if delegating is one to one, yeah, that's long term, that's not feasible. I don't know that I have a golden ratio there, but I would say
It should be
you
better
do
than
have
that.
it should be better. Yes, yes, I'll give you that. It should be better than that. I would say the front end investment always should be paying dividends in the long term, right? Like the first time I teach you to do something is going to take a long time. The first
Absolutely.
time I delegate, and then we should see the trail off, right? Like you
Yes.
should have the autonomy, you should have the resources to be able to do your job and do it well and feel like you're doing well in the job. Um, but that should be trailing, not
Not
increasing. I
ramping up
would
more
say,
after
yeah,
6 months to
sure,
go.
sure,
Okay.
yeah.
Um, do you have a chart of this or anything that we can put in the show notes on eainterviews.com for a download or just like, okay, here's what it should, at least a baseline, because I have a vivid imagination and my ratio was at least 5 to 1, ideally 8 to 10 to 1.
Mm,
If you're doing 10 hours work, it really shouldn't be taking me. I even think 3 hours makes me cringe, but 10 hours of work takes me 3 to explain it. That feels like a lot,
yeah, I
especially if
would,
it's the same thing after months and there's no
sure.
new data, no new info, no new learning curve. It's like,
Mm,
we've been talking about this like 5 months. It's like, what
yeah.
don't you get? It's click, point, upload.
Sure. Yeah. The I always ask people to use the Eisenhower matrix, keep track of everything that you're doing, delegate the things on the bottom half of that quadrant to people. And then you really should be adding up like how much time was that taking you? I think probably a good metric would be like it's going to take someone 2 to 3 times the amount of time it probably takes you to get that done at first and
At
teaching them
first.
that.
Okay, love those
Right.
words.
And then, yeah, and then that should kind of trail down to whatever their skills and expertise is in the position. But that's why I say it's like probably not a magic formula, but we should be seeing
No,
progress,
but
right?
it should be a return on investment, just like anything else.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
what's that metric? I just heard about this recently. I saw it on, I don't know where I was perusing some business journal magazine, and it had like employee average salary, this, that. Had to do with like the value of the employee, like if they make 50 grand a year, 100 grand a year, 200 grand a year, that had to do with the ROI, basically, like
Mm.
the average employee value. It was something like if you're paying them 60 grand a year, they're generating 2 to 300 grand a year. And it had to
Sure.
do
Yeah.
with
We
like,
work with a lot of agencies and that is a metric, right? So we would say like for every employee, we should be generating or bringing in at least, 150 or $200,000, whatever that number is for you. But I think that's a really good metric to look at. And I think it goes back to something you've been saying. We
what is
haven't
the metric?
clarified though. I can't remember what it's adjusted gross income per employee, something like
Yes.
that. Yeah, AGI per
Yes.
employee, I think is the official name. But I mean, that's part of your scoreboard, right? You play the
Yep.
game
KPI.
differently. I have three boys. They play the game differently when we're keeping score. So, do we have compelling metrics? You talked about the leadership summit. Chris McChesney talks about leading indicators, lagging indicators. What do we are we keeping a compelling scoreboard? Do people understand how they affect those numbers, how they're responsible for those numbers, and are we playing a winnable game? I mean, that's all really really important stuff that we've got to be clarifying and people understanding what their responsibility is in that too.
I'm so glad that we have a recording of this, because you mentioned, I'm so tempted to like start looking this stuff up. You said the Eisenhower matrix, Chris McChesney. I'm like, I can't wait to dive into this. You had a question. You said something I said earlier.
I forgot, Mario. Well, we were talking. I think it was really on the scoreboard and making sure that people understand. Kind of going back to that KPI conversation. They understand what their number is. They understand how they affect that, and they have the tools and resources to be autonomous and accountable to that.
Okay.
So I think that maybe was what I was thinking about.
Um, I want to kick it back to the real beginning of this.
Okay.
I always like to front load with value for the listeners and everything, but I think we're sufficiently into this. We can roll the front credits now, like in the movie. How did you get into this? Where did all this start from?
Yeah, I was sort of propelled into leadership really early on in my 20s and probably given opportunities to be in leadership positions that I shouldn't have been given. And worked for some really terrible bosses and some really great ones and had some great mentors and leaders along the way and kind of rose up through did marketing and then HR and then led operations for a couple of organizations. But I've always loved being the person who helped put vision to action and put strategy behind that. But it's not just about strategy, it's about people and it's about leading well and really helping people understand their unique giftedness, their leadership abilities, and leaning into the tough stuff. Like that's the marker of a good team. And so it really was, how do I help organizations? How do I help companies create better teams, get better results, and really fundamentally believe you can have really strong and healthy results. You can scale a company and you can have a really healthy team at the same time. You can be a healthy individual and a healthy leader. So that's really my passion behind it.
I love how you're doing it from a compassion standpoint, because there's people I know, like the businesses, people I know that work for these companies, the businesses are just going gangbusters. But behind the scenes, they're like, they're taking a lashing or 50.
Yeah.
Constantly. Yeah. And I think I'm like, why don't you do something different? They're like, they pay me so well. And it's like, now that courage, now what are you going to lose if you jump ship?
Right. Right. Yeah.
Instead of looking at what
like
you'll gain, like your peace
right.
of mind, your life, the next 20 years before I noticed it in '08, and then a couple of years ago, it was like people going, you know what, I should have done this 20 years ago. Now I am. Good for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, no matter your stage of life, right? Follow your dream and hopefully put your skills and giftedness to good use for those around you.
Let's talk to that person, because they're listening. They're in that position. They have that horrible boss. They need the courage now to do what they need to do. Maybe they want to start their business. Maybe they want to find a different career path. What would you say to them?
Yeah, I mean, I would say you've got one life. You got one life to live, and make it count. Do what you love doing. Do the work of figuring out your baggage. Do the work of figuring out what you are best at, and lean into that. Like, that's a gift to others around you, and it's going to be okay. And I often think about, I've heard a lot of people say, like, you should think of your eulogy. I like to say, think about your retirement party. It's a little less morbid. What do you hope is said about you at your retirement party? What do you hope is said about the impact that you had on other people? And if you're stuck in a job that you hate and you're not following your dream, I'm guessing that stuff's probably not going to be said, when you're 60 or 65, when you get to that point. So I would say,
he always put in the extra 10 hours a week at work.
Yeah.
He missed his kids' birthdays.
Right. Yeah, that's not the stuff that's going to matter, right?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. The wife and kids, or husband, if it's a woman, you do only get one chance. And
yeah, your kids, your partner matter. And your life is not just about your work, right? Like, we have people around us that matter. We have communities around us that matter. And I think when we're living into the best versions of ourselves, everyone can be blessed by that.
You have given us so much to think about. I do have more questions, but I have one. Oh, yay. And this is why I do it, because it's fun. It's not a hard question. Doesn't take a lot of courage. Let me pull that. There we go. Yellow or black?
I'll go yellow.
Cool. What's been one of the hardest things you've had to do in your career that took the most courage?
Yeah. I think starting my company, that was a decision I made earlier this year, and it felt like jumping off the side of a cliff and hoping there was water beneath. But it was the right thing. It was the right call. And, we've been tremendously blessed and have an amazing team that I get to work with every day, and an amazing family. And that's probably been the biggest step of courage I've made in the last couple of years.
Well, congratulations. I know it is a big step, and there's people who don't take it, so congrats.
Thank you.
I'm happy to hear that. We're going to thank the sponsor and come back for the imperfect action round. You've heard me say every business needs a book, including yours, and it's true. And that's why I'm launching my new book at eapublishingmethodbook.com, so you can learn the 7 steps to publish and promote your nonfiction lead and profit-generating business book in 8 weeks. But you know what? Don't take my word for it. Take it from a few of my authors, like Lori.
And I went from having an idea and a possibility to actually getting my book published.
Or Catherine.
Thank you for making my mom #1 best-selling author.
Or Mary Alice.
What he got done for me in 3 days regarding my book launch, unmanageable.
John Cody.
I've worked with Mario over the phone and online, and he's been very helpful in getting me where I needed to go with promoting my books.
Rocio.
There's no way in the world I would have been able to do this with somebody else. I've attempted it in the past. It didn't serve me. As a matter of fact, I ended up more frustrated than anything. So this has been a very seamless process.
Adele.
If you're looking for an amazing business coach, I highly recommend Mario Ficini.
Or Bill Benner.
I can't make a higher recommendation than to work with Mario Ficini. He has been great for me, and right now I won't work with anybody else except for Mario.
Hey, their words, not mine. Visit eapublishingmethodbook.com to get your copy, and I look forward to hearing your transformation as our next video success story. Once again, that's eapublishingmethodbook.com. And we are back with the imperfect action round. Zach, are you ready to take imperfect action?
I'm ready.
I got 3 questions for you, rapid fire answers. First one, what is the fastest path to the profits?
Clarity and a plan.
Number 2, what's the biggest problem you see your prospects making and the fastest way for them to fix it?
Biggest problem I see is leaders avoiding the hard things and hard conversations. And the fastest way to improve on that is hire a coach, hire a therapist, and embrace the suck and do the work.
Fantastic. Number 3, what is the best way to maximize lifetime value?
I think to put your whole heart into your work. I think to put your whole heart into the work with your clients, with your teams, and be the best version of you. The value that you provide is the value that only you can provide. And I think that really translates into, hopefully, to increased value for your clients, increased value for you and for the team that you get to work with.
All good answers. Love everything you're sharing. On top of what you've already mentioned, what books would you recommend to Expert Authority World?
Yeah, I would definitely recommend anything by Brene Brown, anything by Jim Collins, Patrick Lencioni. There is a great book called The Culture Code that talks a lot about the culture in the workplace. And there's a new book coming out called The Renegades, which I've gotten to see some previews on by a friend of mine named Benj, who runs a company called System and Soul. And it really is about the entrepreneurial journey and really creating value in what you are doing. So would highly recommend those books.
Excellent suggestions. Where would you like people to learn more?
Sure. Our website is intentioncollective.co, and would love for you to visit over there. We've got some great resources for leaders and for teams.
It has been an absolute pleasure. I wish we had more time because I think we both have more questions we could ask and give even more value, but it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for everything you've been sharing and coming on.
Thanks, Mario. Thanks for your time. This was really fun.
All right, Expert Authority World, we have another great episode here today. I'll see you on the next one. Have a great day, and God bless. You're already the expert, but have you transformed your expertise into a tangible asset that will generate qualified leads while increasing profit for you 24/7? And if so, how well are you promoting it? With my new book, The Expert Authority Effect Publishing Method, I take you through my process step by step. Visit eapublishingmethodbook.com today to learn the 7 steps to publish and promote your nonfiction lead and profit-generating business book in 8 weeks. Visit eapublishingmethodbook.com to get started now. Once again, that's eapublishingmethodbook.com. Thanks for listening to today's episode. I would love to know what you enjoyed most from it. If you haven't done so already, I invite you to connect with me on my new LinkedIn. You can go to it directly at eainterviews.com/LinkedIn. Once again, that's eainterviews.com/LinkedIn. Lastly, check out the full eainterviews.com site for complete show notes, the full interview video experience, links to the resources we mentioned, and more. Have a blessed day, and I'll see you on the next one.